There are a few comments on some of my videos about new AAA games decrying greed. So I figured out to throw this video together. It's going to be a very off-the-cuff video. Most of my videos are, but this one especially. I just had to respond to this. When you're decrying greed, are you decrying the profit motive in our economy? Are you decrying the desire of capitalists to accumulate money? If so, that's preposterous because the profit motive is the engine of the capitalist mode of production. The profit motive is the engine of our economy. It's the foundation of our capitalist system. Products are produced in order to generate profit. That's the only reason commodities are manufactured. So being upset about greed is just preposterous. It's like being upset about the manner in which your heart or other organs function. You can be upset about it all you like, but it doesn't change anything about that circumstance. It doesn't change anything about that situation. There's no reason to decry conditions that can't be altered. You have to deal with them as they are in reality. Everyone wants to accumulate money for obvious reasons. It enriches their lives. Investors want their investments to generate a return. No one's going to invest in a video game company just for the sake of it. Well, okay, there are some people who invest in products and projects for their artistic merit, but obviously they're a very tiny minority. The vast majority of capitalists, of investors, are spending their money with the expectation that their investment will generate a profit, will generate a return. That's the entire foundation of the capitalist mode of production, of the capitalist system. Video games, like everything else, are products. They are commodities produced in order to be exchanged for money. It's just that simple. So being upset about so-called corporate greed is on its face preposterous. But people have also talked about the so-called high price of newer games. Well, it's just blatantly wrong. In the past, games were far more expensive even without adjusting for inflation. The price of games has dropped because the value of games has dropped because the amount of labor time necessary to produce them has dropped dramatically. Constant capital inputs have increased dramatically. The tools to produce games are far more expensive than they have ever been, but the amount of labor time necessary to produce these games, or at least certain aspects of them, has dropped. The rate of profit has thus fallen. Variable capital is a far smaller proportion of the production cost of these commodities. Therefore, there's less surplus value to extract. But the average rate of profit within media, within film and video games specifically, has been especially bad. It's fallen dramatically. I don't feel like looking up the statistics again because they're difficult to find, but the average rate of profit in video games and movies is lower than many other sectors of the economy. So that's the number one reason why investments have fallen, because again, profit motive is the engine of our economy. Okay, money is really everything now. So of course, investors aren't going to burn up their money investing in a sector of the economy with a far lower return for them than some other sector. It's just common sense. Because the value of games has fallen, because the production cost of games has fallen, again, not total, but in terms of the variable capital input, the real price of games adjusted for inflation has been falling for years. Prices aren't set by a group of cartoon villains, okay? They're determined by actual market conditions. So there are two prices we need to take into consideration when we're talking about price of a game. There's the actual production cost, which we need to look at various aspects of that. And then there's the actual price of the finished game to the gamer. So the price of the game to the gamer, the price of the final product to the consumer, has been dropping for decades, especially adjusted for inflation. But the production cost for the developer, for the publisher of making these games has gone up quite a bit. But the variable capital input has been dropping for decades because of the development of tools that enable lower skilled workers to complete tasks and because of computer programs that automate tasks. So the constant capital input has increased dramatically, but the variable capital input in the cost of production has been dropping for decades, with the development of tools that automate all manner of processes. So that's why the value of games has been dropping. It's why the price has been dropping, or at the very least remains stable. Games that require more fine-tuning, more of a human touch to develop, obviously those have a far higher variable capital input in the production costs, so the prices are higher on those games, but a lot of these games that are super popular, they've got all manner of tools to produce these games with very little human input. So what do I mean when I say that total production cost has gone up, even though the individual components, price to manufacture the pieces of a game, have gone down? All right, let's look at it this way. Let's say I need 1,000,000 bricks to put together a factory, or in any building, it doesn't really matter. Let's say I need 1,000,000 bricks for this building that's being constructed, and the bricks are $2 a piece. Now let's say that for a new building, for the new standards, it's got the same function as the old building. It's serving the exact same purpose, a town hall, a factory, housing, whatever. But now I need 10,000,000 bricks to construct this building. But the cost of the bricks is now 50 cents. Yes, the cost of the bricks is far cheaper. It's dropped by 75%, but the cost of the building is still far more expensive because it's enlarged. That's what's going on with media. That's what's going on with games. Yes, every single aspect of producing a game is far cheaper now than it ever was. Let's take Twisted Metal, for instance. The first Twisted Metal cost almost $1,000,000 to make. I'm sure with modern tools, someone could produce it for, I don't know, maybe $25,000, $50,000, maybe $100,000. I don't know how much it would cost, but we all know it would be a fraction of what it cost back then, especially adjusted for inflation. It wouldn't even be a tenth of what it cost, adjusted for inflation. I'm sure of that. And that's because all the tools are far more developed. It would take far less human labor to produce the game. And so yes, to produce a game, it's far cheaper now. If you're going on a piecemeal basis, okay? Yes, it's far cheaper to produce a 3D model that's on par with a PS2 era game. But models are far more complex. There's far more layers to every 3D model now than there ever were, so they're still far more expensive. Like I said, it's just like the factory analogy. Okay, it's just like the construction analogy. Yes, the cost of the bricks has gone down, but now we need far more bricks to actually construct the building. That is in what way the cost of producing games has gone up. That is why the cost of producing games has gone up. And as a final note on game prices have gone down or stagnated because the prices of games, they're a luxury good. They have to remain roughly equivalent to what they always were, proportionate to worker wages. So it's like with computers. Obviously, no one can afford to spend half of their annual income on luxury goods. So, of course, game prices can't shoot up, okay? Video games can't triple their price adjusted for inflation compared to what they were 30 or 40 years ago. The simple fact that no one would be able to afford them. Media corporations are not any greedier. They're not seeking profit any more so than any other industry. If you're going to decry corporate greed, then why don't you cry about manufacturers of medical supplies, manufacturers of household necessities like tissue paper? Why don't you cry about manufacturers of light bulbs, cry about manufacturers of fans, heaters, t-shirts, and so on? In the previous videos, I feel I've spoken enough about how finance impacts the production of games and how it impacts the quality of games, how long it takes to develop games, and so on. I just wanted to throw this out there to dispel this whole idea that video game corporations or film corporations or any other media corporations are especially greedy, or that greed is driving the prices in some way that's not comparable to any other sector of the economy within our capitalist mode of production. It's kind of preposterous to point to a specific corporation or specific sector of the economy that's functioning exactly as every other sector of the economy and every other corporation on Earth is. Again, we are within a capitalist mode of production. Production is undertaken not to satisfy social needs, but to generate money for investors. It's just that simple. You can be upset about it if you like. That is the reality of the situation. If you want to make a meaningful statement about the way in which financial considerations impact the development of games, you need to point to specific examples, as I've done in my videos. You need to show exactly in what ways financial considerations directly impact the development of games. Simply throwing the phrase corporate greed out there says absolutely nothing.